Kyle Delaney here, bringing you the latest edition of my video blog. What I'd like to talk about in this video is the upcoming fight of Nick Diaz versus BJ Penn, which is now the new main event of UFC 137 due to GSP having to drop out because of an injury, while having to step down because of an injury. Condit is now waiting in the wing for his, not rematch, he's going to be waiting for his title shot. And so I'm going to talk about Diaz and Penn being the main event, break down the fight, talk about who's going to win, how they're going to go about it. Just before I get into anything, I just want to thank the followers on Twitter. Everybody is more than supportive. Truly appreciate everybody's support, watching my videos and all that. And really, there's nothing better than just talking MMA with people in the MMA community. We're all the best. And thank you for that. Shout out to Couch Fighter and everybody who works on the staff. More things coming for the future. Stay posted, stay tuned, check it out. Good articles coming out every day. Once again, thanks to the followers, shout out to Couch Fighter, and I'm just going to hop right into it. I'm trying to keep these videos a little bit shorter, try not to reach the 15-minute mark, so we shall see. So, GSP's out. UFC 137's card takes another big hit. I think the card has changed now 3 times, swapping fights at first. Diaz goes out, down, he's off the card. BJ Penn faces Diaz, and Condit steps up to fight GSP. GSP's out now. Now Nick Diaz and BJ Penn's the main event. Just very quickly in regards to that is, I understand, that Carlos Condit gets the weight for his title shot, but if Koscheck, they said Koscheck offered to fight. Remember, Koscheck used to be a top contender. He took his time off. He came out. He won. And, remember, he was a top contender. He fought GSP. He lost in very, I don't want to say embarrassing fashion, but he didn't do well in that fight at all. He got completely dominated. But you know what? I'm not Dana White. I don't make matchups, but I feel like the card took a big hit. It is an exciting card. You get to still see a lot of good fighters fight, but keeping Condit on the card and having him fight Josh Koscheck would be a great fight. And if he wins, he fights GSP. If he loses, the winner of BJ Penn and Nick Diaz fights GSP. That's just the way I see it. But also, you could have Condit wait and fight GSP in 2012. That's what the verdict is, and that's when GSP is supposed to be back. So, unfortunate, but Diaz and Penn will be. It could be a main event on any other card, And these two guys put on shows. They're aggressive fighters, and they both respect each other, which is great, So hopping right into it, that's the backstory regards to the GSP and Condit. Now Nick Diaz and BJ Penn, both fighting each other, both exceptional boxers, both black belts in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and what's it called? Diaz is training boxing with Andre Ward. BJ Penn's got the wrestling advantage. This is a very tough fight to pick who's going to win. And I'm a fan of both fighters. I mean, I'm a bigger fan of Nick Diaz. I'll be 100% honest with that one. It has nothing to do with my decision on the fight at all. But they're both great fighters, and they make it very difficult because both of them have steel chins. This is not an easy one to pick. I don't think anybody's going to get knocked out or TKO'd in this fight. Submission, maybe, very slim to none. Who knows? And anything's possible. You could always get caught in submission. So, you never know. So, let's just break it down first. Nick Diaz. Okay, Nick Diaz, training boxing with Andre Ward, and he comes out better. His stand-up comes out better every single time. He's been training with Andre Ward, or he's been working his boxing. So, regards to that, I say the best way to put it is that Nate Diaz, his brother, who's also been training with Andre Ward, the Diaz brothers do everything together. Nate Diaz looked unbelievable. His stand-up looked ridiculous, like 30 times better against Gomi. And even though he won by submission, it was his striking that set up the submission, and his boxing was exceptional. I think that's the only way to put it. His boxing was exceptional. His head movement was even good. He looked like, I'm not going to say he looked like Frankie Edgar out there, but his boxing was good. His combinations were good. It looked like we were all watching Nick Diaz. So if Nate could come out that impressive, one could only imagine how much better Nick Diaz is going to come out with his boxing. And he's already a great technical boxer. So, and you know what? The one thing about Diaz's boxing that's so impressive is that he is the aggressor, but he waits to get hit. He waits to get hit because he uses his chin to his advantage. He waits to get hit, then he jumps on you. I mean, look what he did against Paul Daly. He took the hits, then he jumped all over Daly with combination punches. It's just Diaz is a very fun fighter to watch, whether you hate him or you love him. There's a very big divide in the MMA community about what they think about Nick Diaz, and rightfully so. Okay, I may be a fan. I love Nick Diaz, the fighter. His personality. Everybody needs a bad guy. I'm not saying. I mean, like everybody needs a bad guy or a villain in MMA or in anything. And it's unfortunate. I mean, I think regards to his other extracurricular activities, his bad habits, he's gonna have to learn to kick them someday. And I'm not saying social anxiety is an easy thing to kick either, but you know, it'd be nice if Nick Diaz could learn how to play the game a little bit. The whole the beauty pageants, as he calls them. It'd be nice if he could play the game just a little bit, but that's just not Nick Diaz. Um, so that's what Nick Diaz is. So, and regards to his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, his ground game is great. He's struggled though with wrestlers in the past. That's one of the problems he had in the UFC. He struggled with wrestlers. Diego Sanchez completely manhandled him. I mean, I think a good way to put it is too. You got your his brother Nate, his match with Rory McDonald. Rory McDonald manhandled Nate Diaz. I'm not saying Nate and Nick are the same fighters, but they don't wrestle. They're great Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners, but they are not wrestlers. And BJ Penn has that wrestling advantage in this. I'm not saying BJ Penn's one of the best wrestlers, but he does have a wrestling advantage on Nick Diaz. Now, Nick Diaz's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is spectacular. So, trains with Cesar Gracie. That's where he does it, and that's his main background. He's been focusing a little bit more on boxing lately, but Diaz's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu will allow him to grapple with BJ Penn. Just a matter if he can get up off the ground, and he could potentially lock in some sort of a hold, but no, you never know. So Diaz, boxing, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that's what he has, and steel chin. Okay, Diaz could take a punch. Okay, Diaz takes punches, he takes punches, takes punches. He took a couple haymakers from Paul Daly. I don't want to say 100% haymakers, but he took some big shots from Paul Daly. He's taking big shots from a lot of people. At the Zaratsky fight, I know I'm saying it wrong, but the Zaratsky fight is, I mean, they literally stood and banged. Like, I hate using that term once again. They stood and literally went toe-to-toe, and Diaz's chin is what prevailed in the end. And so Diaz's chin's good. He does get cut a lot, though. So Diaz gets cut a lot, and BJ Penn cuts a lot of people in the process. The person he's always fighting is always bleeding. I mean, look at the cut he put on Diego Sanchez with that kick. Okay, so you have to think about all the angles in this. Is Nick Diaz could get cut, and the fight could end. Just like it did against KJ Noons. Diaz gets cut very easily. So he does have a steel chin, but he does get cut. BJ Penn does, cuts a lot of people with his strikes or the way he goes about things. So, and big advantage for Diaz. Guy trains in triathlons. His cardio is great. So I know Gracie came out the other day and said, BJ Penn, don't be scared, homie. Go 5 rounds. We'll make it a 5-round fight. We'll talk to Dana White. If this was a 5-round fight, Nick Diaz, I think, would get the huge advantage. His cardio is better than BJ Penn, who has been known to gas out in later fights. And he isn't a true welterweight, obviously. So it'll be interesting to see. So it's a 3-round fight. Cardio is important. Diaz is going to push the pace like he always does. So that's Nick Diaz. Great cardio, does triathlons, but it's a 3-round fight. If it was 5-round, I think it'd be a little bit different, but cardio will come into play, just not as much if it was a 5-round fight. And really, when have most Diaz fights go in 5 rounds? He's been finishing his fights lately, and it'll be interesting to see. Now, into BJ Penn, one of the youngest guys, not youngest guys, one of the guys, they say the other day, it took him 3 years to get his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Believe that's accurate. And took him 3 years to get that. He's a great BJJ practitioner. His boxing, the one thing that I say Nick Diaz, I didn't say this before, is that Nick Diaz lacks knockout power. He's a combination puncher. BJ Penn does have knockout power, and he has great power punches. And he's a little bit more dynamic than Nick Diaz. He uses his legs more, his knees, and he's got heavy hands for a guy in that division. BJ Penn lays the lumber. He's got some heavy hands. That's the advantage he has. But it's a question is, can his heavy hands knock Nick Diaz's block off? Can he really rattle Nick Diaz? Nick Diaz's chin has been tested time and time again. And the thing is that BJ Penn has a great chin too. The guy's only been TKO'd very, very few times. I believe it's 2 times. He's been TKO'd, and that's saying something about the guy's chin. So we got a battle of steel chins with guys who are willing to stand up and bang, and guys who can also be very, very dangerous on the ground. And BJ Penn's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, like I said, the guy was a sponge. He learned the Jiu-Jitsu that quickly. And he started. I mean, that's how he got all the attention. It's the way he won these BJJ competitions is how we got the UFC became interested in him. So we know what to expect from BJ Penn on the ground. We know what to expect from Nick Diaz on the ground. And BJ Penn's more than capable of grappling with Nick Diaz, and he has the wrestling advantage. Now, how he goes about game planning for this fight is very interesting. If he could, obviously, he has the chin to stand and fight with Nick Diaz and push the pace, but is he willing to do so? If he has the wrestling advantage, why not take Diaz down? You have the BJJ to avoid the submission and try and ground and pound Nick Diaz. Nick Diaz can take the beating, but if you're going 3 rounds, try and wrestle and break his will. That's a very hard will to break, by the way. This is not me being biased to Nick Diaz. It's going to be hard to break BJ Penn's will. But, wrestle with him, take him to the ground, get on top, and start beating him down. Rain down, use your wrestling, keep the fight on the mat. You both are black belts in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So it'll be interesting to see how Nick Diaz plans for this fight. I mean, not Nick Diaz, BJ Penn plans for this fight. I think we all know what to expect from Nick Diaz. I think Diaz and Penn will stand up and exchange punches, but I think if BJ Penn's going to be most successful in this fight, he's going to fight to his advantage and use his wrestling. That being said, okay, I've broken down both fighters, all the angles. So I'm going to go, I'm not going to say the underdog, but, I'd say the advantage is BJ Penn has the wrestling advantage, and, I favor wrestling. Wrestling is it's the new thing in MMA. That's what some of the most successful fighters in MMA are doing. They're wrestlers. But I'm going to go with my gut on this one, not just me being a fan of Nick Diaz. I think Nick Diaz is going to win this one by decision. If he could keep the fight standing, he could fight well off his back too. Anything's possible, but I'm saying this one goes to Nick Diaz by decision. I see him not putting BJ Penn out of his comfort zone, but he's going to press and press and press, and hopefully he's been working on his takedown defense for BJ Penn, and he's going to throw the combination punches. His jab is going to be very, very important on this. Maybe he could jump all over Penn. Who knows? But, I don't think there's a possibility that these two could TKO each other, but it's going to be very tough with both of their chins. But Diaz takes this one by decision. I think in one of the rounds, BJ Penn's going to get Diaz on his back. But other than that, these guys are going to go to war in the end. Whether Diaz wins or BJ Penn wins. The main thing about this fight is it's unfortunate we don't get to see GSP and Condit fight, but we do get reward and we get to see Nick Diaz and BJ Penn still fight. So enjoy that fight. I'm still going to watch UFC 137. So in the end, enjoy this fight. Enjoy the card. We're going to get to see some other fighters. Hopefully GSP has a speedy recovery. And, I can't wait to see Carlos Condit stick it to him. It's going to be a great fight. And, root for whether it's BJ Penn or Nick Diaz, root for whoever you believe in. In the end, know that these two both respect each other. Nick Diaz said just today that BJ Penn's his favorite fighter and he respects him the most. So, hopefully in the end, whoever wins, and we get to see how smooth Diaz's transition is in from Strikeforce to the UFC, see if he can face the competition and the talent. Interested to see that, but in the end, know that this is going to be a good fight. We're not going to see one of these fights. We see fights like this all the time. This is a rare matchup. Two guys with the same type of style. So enjoy the fight wherever you're watching it. UFC 137. I believe it's October 28th. So give it a watch. Enjoy wherever you're watching it. This is Kyle Delaney signing off. I'm out of here.